everybody. This is Bill Kenower for Author Magazine, and this month I spoke with Bruce Van Dusen, author of 60 Stories, About 30 Seconds, How I Got Away with Becoming a Pretty Big Commercial Director Without Losing My Soul, or maybe just part of it. Bruce and I talked about his long and enduring rise through the ranks of big-time television commercial directors, about how he managed to stay sane in a pretty insane business, and how what started out as a how-to book for film students turned into a fast-paced and highly entertaining memoir. Enjoy. All right, Bruce, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So the book, I have to actually read this to get the subtitle. It's 60 Stories, About 30 Seconds, How I Got Away with Becoming a Pretty Big Commercial Director, a pretty big commercial director without losing my soul, or maybe just part of it. Love the book, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sincerely, very entertaining. I want to get into the structure that you chose for it, which I think worked very well. But let's start with what you're writing about, which is you have been directing commercials since the mid-'70s. Is that, did I get the timeline right?
I got out of college in 1976. I got out of Boston University and moved to New York in the winter of '76. And I spent about a year, 18 months knocking around trying to get jobs in the film business. And I wound up directing my first commercial at about the 18-month point, just because I didn't know better. One of the huge things I had going for me, Bill, is that I knew nothing. And so I knew no rules. I knew everybody, if I'd had a mentor, they'd said, you can't do that. I knew nothing.
Right.
So I just plowed ahead, and that enabled me to start at a what in hindsight turned out to be a really young age. Yeah.
You were like Orson Welles when he was making Citizen Kane. Apparently
Yeah.
he knew nothing.
Yeah, but I was instead making a commercial for a famous electronics retailer.
Yes, I remember that guy.
And you may, even in Seattle, he had a real, his net went pretty wide. Crazy Eddie Antar, who 10 years after I dealt with him was indicted for major scale embezzling. But he, God bless him, he's dead now. He hired me to make my first commercial in a strange circumstance, as you know from reading the book. Yeah. I had gone out to give him an idea, and his ad manager had looked at me and basically said, "Those are terrible ideas, just forget it." And about 2 weeks later, he called me and said, "Can you come and present the ideas to Eddie?" And I said, "Great. You want me to come back out to the office in Brooklyn?" He said, "No, meet me at Roosevelt Hospital." And I said, "What?" He said, "I'll explain it tomorrow." So I haul into Roosevelt Hospital, which is the worst hospital at this point in New York. I mean, it's terrible. And he explains to me that Eddie had been attacked 2 days before. So he has broken ribs, his jaw's broken, he's on life support. And I'm going to go present ideas to a guy. And,
perfect.
Pretty much it's all been downhill from there.
But you get it. And so, I found this book interesting for a lot of reasons. One of them is just, I am so interested in how people make stuff. And
then you're my reader, because
yes,
I explain that to people and they say, "What is it about?" And I say, it's really about work. And it's this weird work that people go, "Oh, I know what that is." And you go, "You have no idea."
No, you don't. You don't know what it is. And I will tell you, since reading this book, I am not able to, I'm actually watching commercials with more interest than
I'm sorry. I owe you a huge apology.
No, because it's now interesting to me, because I'm sort of thinking about all that was going, like, oh, that decision and that decision. I wonder how long did they spend 1 day on that, 2 days? Was that just one? Anyway, so, but you go into how the commercials are made, but you know, you're a good storyteller, and as the
Thank you.
subtitle suggests, there is the conflict within you and within, I think, all artists, and I'm going to use that word whether you like it or not, that have to deal with, which is the relationship between money and their work and survival and what they do. And you talk quite honestly about some of the self-loathing that can permeate the world of commercial directors. Maybe not all, but to some degree, they're
Yeah.
all kind of contending with that. Yeah, was that
Yeah.
part of the part of what drove you to want to write about it, or do you just realize as you were telling it that that was not the whole thing, but part of the conflict, the tension in it?
It's a. I don't know if it's a huge part of it for all of them, because some don't ever. Most of them go into the business really thinking that it's going to be a way station,
Right.
and I'm going to go do television. I'm going to go do movies. I'm going to do something else, and it's a really hard business to get going in. And so if you've put a little time into it, you start to think, oh, you know, I've got kind of a career going here. And then you look and think, yeah, but my career is deodorant commercials
Right.
and cruise line commercials. And is this really all there is? And then suddenly you're getting paid. And then as you do it more, you're kind of getting paid a lot.
Yeah.
And if you are lucky enough to have a family and some kids, you're thinking, oh man, this is like way better than my two friends who are making documentaries and they're living in a fucking lean-to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's a very common conflict, but clearly, and thank you very much, you've actually read the book, there is a real, there to me is a real issue where a lot of people who think of themselves as artists, and certainly filmmakers, many of them think of themselves as artists, they would find out what I did. Even though I'd made a couple of movies and I'd been at Sundance, they would say, well, I mean, you make commercials, isn't, and I'd say, well, and what do you do? And they say, well, you know, I do modern music. And my image is just of a guy sitting in a terrible coffee place in Bushwick, and his parents, he's not opening his parents' email, which says we're not paying your rent anymore.
Right. Right.
And his idea of success, she maintains, is strictly an artistic or a critical success.
Right.
This is all the time in writing.
Yeah.
And I look at this and think, God damn it, if I'm going to put this much time into this, I want to get paid.
Yeah.
I want to actually, I'm really glad if a lot of people buy this book. I'm not like aiming to have it just only appeal to 6 people.
Right.
So I think as you go at it more, I think you start to adjust better to it. The balance of art and commerce. And it is commercial directing is one of the easiest examples to give people, because they'll go, oh, well, doesn't that exist? And I go, no. Fiction writers are not trying to hit the ball out of the park that way. Maybe somebody who's writing a mystery and trying to create a character. Acting, any of these art forms are ones where usually not starvation, but
it's a threat. It's a potential threat for sure.
Yeah.
You have to deal with it. My oldest son, who is now almost making his living doing YouTube, but that wasn't the plan. He watched me growing up, and I struggled for a while. I was waiting tables and doing writing and stuff, and it wasn't happening. And he said, Dad, I'm going to be a middle manager. Just so I never have to be a starving artist. And now he's doing just fine. But he saw what it was like as I was trying to put it together before I found the stuff I like to do. But it seems to me that one of the things I like that I thought you wrote about really passionately, and what I find compelling, was that the role of the director, there's the product, the end product, which, whether it's a 30-second commercial or 2-hour film, is storytelling on some level. But then there's the other part of the job, which no one will ever see, which is you and all the people you are having to corral, motivate, inspire, and also, it seems to me, I have some experience with this from doing theater, create a creative environment where people can work at their best. Yeah. And that's got nothing to do with I mean, it produces the product, but we'll never see it like we'll see editing choices or music or whatnot. Yeah.
Very insightful question. Very true. It's never seen until you get on the other side of the camera. When you sit in the theater and go see a play, you don't see what's going into that. You just see it that night.
Yep.
Oh, how'd they learn those lines? Why are they moving that way? On a set, you are having to motivate your 60 technicians. You're having to let your actors feel as if they're geniuses, because you want them to always feel that they cannot make a mistake.
Right.
That took me about 10 years to learn, as to make them feel like the most important man or woman on the set. And if you do that, they just can't believe it. They do anything for you because they spend their lives just being dumped aside.
Right.
So if you are nice to them as a director, and then you have this crazy peanut gallery, Bill, which is the advertising agency employees
yes.
and the clients. And that
God.
is like an asylum over there. And all of them feel, because they're at the shoot, that not only do they have an opinion, but they're going to voice that opinion.
Yeah.
And it's usually prefaced by, I took a film class.
Right.
And
they know nothing. They know nothing about what you're doing.
Nothing.
Nothing.
And I describe
and
it.
They hired you. I'm sorry, but they hired you because they know nothing. I remember hearing Jerry Seinfeld talk about this. We talk about executives. Said, none of them are funny. None of them know funny, but I know funny, but they're telling me about funny. And it struck me the same sort of thing. They're all telling you about stuff they know nothing about.
No, it's exactly it. It's as if the analogy I give in the book is I say it's as if the pilot of the 747 has to come out and ask the guy in 3D whether you want to go on the southerly Atlantic route tonight, or do you want to do the polar cap? Now, the guy who's sitting in 3D has no idea how to fly an airplane, but because he bought a seat, the pilot's got to,
right.
Okay, I got to ask. It's the other example I give, which is scarier but equally true, is that, a lot of the people that I have had to deal with over the years will always throw into a sentence, I thought about directing. They usually say,
oh no.
They usually go, I thought about directing. And then I think it is, and they look at what I'm doing and they think, he's just walking around, he's in sneakers, and it looks, I can do that.
Right.
I am so glad that just thinking that you want to do something does not allow you to become a colorectal surgeon, because this is, I accept it. With my line of work, people go, yeah, I thought about being a director. God bless you. God bless you.
How long did you think about it?
Yeah. So it's, you have those very weird taskmasters in it. And some of them, and I think the kind of the schizophrenic part of it, which is what you identified, is that in commercials, because it's this weird balance of art and commerce, your technicians, your grips, gaffers, your makeup people, your actors, these are really creative people. They know how to do something very weird and different. And then you've got these other people over there who are the kind of people who wear, like the company polo shirt to the neighbor thing, and they're watching it, but you have to address their concerns, because for that particular day, they're your audience.
And this is what I found interesting reading your book, is that on some level, you couldn't do this work as well as you do, and for as long as you've done it, if you were not equally interested in the business of being a director, the business of the profound human, you're dealing with people, and as soon as you're dealing with people, you're on, if you want to be, you can be on a deep level of of existence, because you're dealing with people's egos, their fears, their need. You did a great description of the life of an actor before a shoot, as opposed to the gaffer before the shoot, and all the insecurity. So you're dealing with psychology, with survival, because you're dealing with money, and you have to be interested in that too, and that has its own every moment kind of challenges, which has its own artistry to it, its own payoffs. Yeah, that is exciting in its own way, just as a exercise in human relation.
Well, it's a career that I felt suited me really well, because to their constant great embarrassment, my children find me the most curious idiot. They say, you will go anywhere and sit down and be asking people about this. And I said, life is just so interesting, and I don't know what they're doing. So
Right.
it suits me in my work a little bit, because I have to oftentimes go into a place. I have to sometimes go to a place where I don't speak the language. I have to go to a place where, I have to sit with a guy who's the #1 Formula One driver in the world. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
But I always found the best thing in the world, Bill, was people would say, well, do you know anything about what I do? And I'd go, no. They'd go, are you interested? And I go, yeah, I'm interested in anything. Oh my God, I got the coolest behind the scenes trips that I never could have imagined. And that made also, part of what I do became, as I became more and more successful at it, it wasn't that it was repetitive, but I was doing a very particular thing. You're doing a form of almost custom manufacturing, and you'd appear on a stage or on a set, and within the course of 12 hours, you would create something. And you had to get really good at being able to instantly read people, instantly see what was weak, instantly see what was strong,
Right.
And then try to get through that period and deliver what it was you knew was there, what you knew they wanted. And oftentimes, I think writers, I did not have to deal with this because I wrote a memoir, but writers, when I hear of writers turning in work, and then, I hear a story like of what Gordon Lish did to Raymond Carver, I go, are you kidding?
Yeah, that's a famous one. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's unusual, but that was, yes, he certainly changed things around.
It didn't look like that. And then I thought, how could Raymond Carver, who I looked at as a god, I think, Jesus, how did he react when he got that back? And then I thought, oh, maybe he looked at it and thought it was good.
He may have reacted the way you reacted when your editor cut Cold Feet. I think that was the name of the movie.
Yeah. And Sally, Sally Menke she did a brilliant thing. And that was kind of what I had to learn. And I think a lot of directors, even if they're doing television or movies, Bill, directors have to learn to sort of be forcibly dumb. And each time they walk into an editing room, have their fingers crossed and say, oh, it's going to be way better.
Right.
And then they've got to have in their back pocket the skills, which are usually storytelling skills, to be able to, if it's not right, fix it.
Right.
So
let's talk about stories, because this book, so you have this career, you enjoy it. It's been lucrative, sounds like, enough to enjoy yourself. Why put yourself through the experience of writing a book about it? What told you to do that? And tell me about that decision.
Well, if you even have a career as a television commercial director, a successful career may be like 5 or 7 years long. Somehow I managed to have a career that's lasted for 45 years. Now, I do a lot less these days than I did 10 years ago. I have no right to even be making them now. I don't know why I am, because there's plenty of younger people, plenty of
Sure.
people who want to do it. But over the course of 45 years, I had a lot of remarkable experiences. The real reason I wrote the book was I initially wanted to write a how-to book for film students,
Right.
because none exists. There's
Right.
a book Sidney Lumet wrote many years ago called Making Movies. Well, I picked that up and I thought, well, this guy made tons of movies, but it
Right.
doesn't tell you anything about how to do it. So I wrote a very, I thought, extremely helpful book for somebody who was just getting out of film school. Simple stuff. How long does it take to do this? If you're
Right.
scouting locations, don't fall in love with a second floor because it just takes longer to get up there. Figure out a way to, little stuff. And then I put teeny little interstitial stories in, like the lion who peed on the all the grapes.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So I gave it to somebody to read who's in the business, because I thought it'd be really helpful.
In the film business or the
In the
publishing
film business,
Okay.
film business. And she said, you know, you're a good guy, you're a good writer. This is really dull, but those little stories, I said,
Oh.
those little stories are just the dumb stories. She goes, those are great stories. How many do you have of those? I said, pretty much unlimited. But then I had so I repurposed it as being about that. But then I thought I didn't want to write just blackouts, Bill.
Yeah.
So then I started to do the thing that was the hardest for me, which was to put stuff from my own life in it. And I tried to be sparing with it, but I also thought anybody who's interested in what's going on is also going to say, well, where is he?
Right.
Does he have kids now?
Right.
How's everybody reacting to what's happening here? And so that was the latest stuff that I added in, and it was the hardest stuff, probably because I waited so long.
Well,
but hopefully it also resonates a little in it.
Well, what's interesting is, because memoir is sort of where I reside now. That's what I teach. That's what I write. It's what I do. So, and oftentimes people are driven because of the personal stuff. So like I've got to tell the story of the time my father did such and such, and that's the thing that's been driving me. And they're often driven by that.
Yeah.
But so you came at it differently, which is that you made the wise choice of giving it structure around your work. So that's the thing that holds it together. But you cannot leave yourself out. It just is impossible. As soon as you say you've got to be in there. We've got to know a little bit about your struggles and so on. And so it does not surprise me that was hard, because as soon as you start writing about yourself, your ego can get into it, your fears about what people think of you, and all that can muck it up. So it doesn't surprise me that was harder than telling some fun stories like the lion peeing. That's just fun and easy. But about you, it's going to be a little trickier.
Well, I think that's right. And then as you also see in it, it was not possible for me to really try to go at much of it in I don't want to say in a bullshit way, but I wasn't doing it heavy. I was still trying to keep the same self-deprecating tone in the personal stuff. And then, there's some sad stuff in it and some exhilarating stuff in it. And I tried to let those be real, but I tried to keep the voice, a word I've learned in writing. I tried to keep the voice one that was always a little bit like, what's this guy going to say next?
Right.
But not that it's going to necessarily be outrageous, but that it'll be, oh, you know what? I had something very similar to this in my work, even if it's not this particular field. And oh, look what he did with this. And still he was always just saying, God, man, I wish I could do that over again.
Right.
There was a lot of that, and a lot of just because I never knew any better. I never knew what I was doing.
Well, you wisely kept your humility throughout it, always important. I always say to my students, never brag and never complain. You got to try about your own life, that is. And I felt you did a great job in that.
Thank you very much.
And it was, the format's a lot of fun for the viewers who may not have read it. It's 60 stories, about 30 seconds, and each story is pretty short. So it's a great, easy way to take him through his life in these little vignettes, but are all connected. Um, what Now, the interesting thing I find about writing about my own life, which is now the subject of all my work, is how much I learn. You know, I always write to surprise myself. So was there some stuff I'm not gonna say you have to discover about yourself, but were there some sort of discoveries that you made in writing this that you hadn't anticipated when you started it?
Well, that's a very good question. Um, I think I think that one of the biggest discoveries I had was to see that how insecure I was about my success, even long after,
Right.
at least to somebody standing in the outside world, they were saying, "Oh, he's a huge success." I and as I got older and had more accomplishments and more under my belt and more of this stuff, I I kept thinking, when is that feeling going to go away? And I noticed it as I would write the stories
Yeah.
because I'd hook into a story for a reason or an event or a
Right.
personality.
Right.
But then as I'm reliving it and remembering it, I'm going, God, I can't believe this. I'm standing here with Gina Davis and Phil Jackson and Vilmos Zsigmond, and I've got everything I want to do. And I'm still thinking, oh boy, I hope nobody figures out I don't know what I'm doing here.
That's right.
And I thought, man, does this feeling ever go away? And I don't have the answer to that.
Right.
I think I'm kind of intrigued because now as I read more memoirs, wanting to learn about it, particularly memoirs of people who do things like we do in any creative field, music, writing, film,
Right.
I usually the people who I find appealing, they just don't feel like they're walking on solid ground for a long
Right.
time. Whereas, Rob Kardashian is like,
Well,
Jesus, wow. I mean, at 8, I knew I was going to be president, so
yeah. So he claims. I found that aspect of the story. It was reoccurring and very believable and a little surprising. Still, even though I've gone through that my whole life too, like when are they going to figure it out? When do I feel like I've got this down? Every once in a while, I convince myself like I know how to do this. But then, here's something interesting you might find, which is that Alice Hoffman, I love her. She's a wonderful novelist. And I don't think she's ever been rejected according to her. And she's published maybe 30 books now. And she was on Oprah and she's had movies made and won awards, blah, blah. What she said to me was every time she sits down to write, she says to herself, I don't know how to write a novel. Every time she starts, because it's different than the last. And that sense of being a beginner again, I think if you're any kind of, well, maybe it's true for businessmen, I don't know, but in the arts for sure, that sense of always having to find your self-confidence, like every time you face the page. I don't know that that'll ever go away. You have
well,
to
I
find
think
it, find it, and find it.
it's fuel in a way,
Yeah.
it's and I think listen, I know for many people, musicians, writers, directors, it's not fuel. It's something that just makes them freeze up.
Right. Right.
So you have to learn to kind of make this anxiety or just sense of discomfort go, oh, okay, I can use, this is part of it. I hesitate to
Right.
use the word process, but, I would early on, because I had started so young at it, I'd walk on a set and by the time I was 30, I'd done a couple hundred of these things. So I really knew my way around and people go, guy's 12 years old. How does he know all this? And, if you'd given me a shot of sodium pentothal, I would have said, I kind of know most of it. I mean, I know what the equipment's for and this. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do today, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm not as adrift as I was when I did this the first time.
Right.
You've got the advantage, having sat down in the chair 30,000 times, of knowing, hey, I'm going to live.
Right.
I'm going to live.
Right.
So
that's a good starting place.
yeah,
I will be alive at the end of this.
Yeah, it's way better than, and I think that that's where having some success, meaning you get to do what it is that you want to do a lot, you get to really develop chops. I feel really shitty for people who, through whatever reasons, whether maybe they don't have the skill, maybe they run out of money because they can't keep it going, they don't get to spend enough time trying to learn and do what they do to see whether they really know how to do it. So
Bruce, very interesting guy. Interesting book. I recommend it to all of you out there.
Thank you.
In the internet world. But I'm not quite done with you. I got one more question.
Sure.
And what I'd like you to do is finish this sentence. Well, I'll ask it the way I ask all my authors. If writing has taught you anything, it's taught you what?
It's taught me that if you're going to do it, you have an obligation to be as interesting on the page as you are in life.
Do you think you did that? Do you have any confidence that you pulled that off?
I tried really hard on this first one, and I probably tried too hard, because I'm sure that a person who's way more experienced as a writer, I'm sure that you could look at many of these things and go, oh, I see how that paragraph was originally written, and I see how he slugged this in there because I'm looking for a brownie point I want the reader to say, oh, I picked up this goddamn book. Oh, that's funny. That's good.
Right.
Or, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
In
my opinion, you succeeded.
Thank you very much.
It was excellent COVID company for me.
Very good.
So well done. Congratulations on your first book. Maybe there'll be more. What do you think? Possible? Conceivable?
I'm hoping. Starting. I've taken the advice of some of the writers I've met and trying to start working already on another one. Helps.
Excellent. Well, good luck with that, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
You're welcome.
See you later.